tere, nii ma olen Jason ja ma räägin natuke eesti keelt, aga ma arvan, et see on nii keeruline. Nii ma tean, kui ma räägin eesti keelt nüüd, ma olen nagu, ma arvan, et nii, so I'm going to speak in English. But so just to kind of introduce myself, hi, my name's Jason. I study at the University of Tartu. I am a PhD student there, and I actually study semiotics. And my particular field of study is cuteness. So I look at why we find certain animals cute, why we think things are cute, and how that impacts design and other things. But unfortunately today, I'm not going to be talking too much about cuteness and what makes things cute, but rather I'm going to be talking about my favorite subject, which is myself. But I won't be just talking about myself. I'll be talking about my experience, what it's like to be in Tartu, what it's like to be there as a foreign person, and just how kind of life in Tartu is in general for me and for just kind of the people around me as well. So if you couldn't tell already by my lovely accent, I'm actually from the US. So I've been living in Tartu for almost 4.5 years now. And that always brings up a wide variety of questions. So often daily I have to answer questions like, why Estonia? Why Tartu? Why are you here? And really just kind of, it's something that comes up quite a bit. And I know for me as a foreigner, you guys are definitely interested in these sort of why questions. But right now, these questions of why Estonia, why Tartu, why the University of Tartu are really relevant for you guys as well. And when you have an outside perspective giving you some information on how I view things, it'll actually give you a lot of information, because a lot of times when you have your typical view and you're from the area, when you think about a place, you already have your preconceived notions. I know for a lot of Estonians, especially if you're from Tallinn, you're already viewing Tartu as, oh, it's like a little village in the middle of nowhere. Or you might have other ideas about what Tartu is like. But when you have a fresh perspective of someone who vaguely didn't even know what Estonia was to begin with, you can actually learn a lot from that. So today I'm going to be answering some of those why questions, why Tartu, tell a little bit about my experience, and then hopefully give you guys some interesting insight that might make you more interested, or at least change your perspective on what you can actually do in Tartu. So for me, the first question is, how did I even end up in Estonia? Well, there's a bit of a fun story to that. So I actually was doing my bachelor's in the University of Oklahoma. Does anyone know where Oklahoma is? Oh, okay, like a few people. But I actually grew up in Baltimore, Maryland. Do you guys know Baltimore? Baltimore? How do more people know Oklahoma than Baltimore? That's so weird. But for me, I actually ended up doing my undergraduate at the University of Oklahoma. And for me, moving from Maryland to Oklahoma was probably some of the biggest culture shock I've ever had. Coming to Estonia was way easier. But during my bachelor's, I studied linguistics. And from that, I had actually learned about Estonia from my language classes, mainly just talking about, oh, how Estonian has a really complicated grammar and it's hard to learn. So I had always known a little bit about Estonia. But when it came time for me to do a study abroad, I was looking at all my options and saw Estonia on the list. Now, for me, I have a bit of a guilty thing. Ma olen natukene hipster, so I do have some hipster tendencies here and there. And so when it came time for a study abroad, the inner hipster in me took over. And no, I didn't want to go to the UK. No, I didn't want to go to Spain. I wanted to go somewhere completely random that no one at my university had ever been to. So I was like, Estonia, perfect, let's go there. But I had known a little bit about Estonia beforehand. So as I began researching, I learned that, it's, a very, nature-y place. There's lots of technology, very, relaxing. And I had heard about the University of Tartu and was like, oh, okay, it's the #1 school in Estonia. And there's, a lot going on there. They have some topics I'm interested in. So I ended up going, okay, we're going to study in Estonia. And still at this point, I had never even left the US. So really my first time on any sort of visit anywhere was Estonia. I'd been to Canada before, but Canada doesn't really count as a foreign country if you're from the US too much. But yeah, so I basically had decided on Estonia. So when I told my mom, hey, I'm going to Tartu, Estonia for a year, she had a lot of questions herself. The first question is, what is an Estonia? And so I explained to her it's a city in Estonia, and for you guys, it's always interesting because typically when you say Estonia somewhere in the US, Americans don't realize it's necessarily a country, but rather they think it's like a city in West Virginia. So when I was telling a lot of my friends, oh, hey, I'm going to Estonia, they were like, oh, you're going to Virginia? And I'm sure even some of the friends I never spoke to directly, they probably still think I'm somewhere in West Virginia when I upload pictures. They're like, oh, West Virginia looks really nice. I can never understand those country accents. But yeah, so I had to answer a lot of questions there already. So after explaining to my mom, no, I am not going to Russia. Yes, it is a modern country. Yes, they have internet. No, I'm not going to live in an igloo. I finally got the go-ahead to go to Estonia. So after doing that, I came to Estonia. I hadn't really looked too much into it. I rather kind of wanted it to be an experience for myself. And ever since then, I've had a lot of interesting experiences in Estonia. Upon my first arrival, I flew into the Tallinn airport. I hadn't really spoken to anyone because at this point, I had been told oh, Estonians don't talk to anyone. So just don't even try to make conversation from, what you see on the internet. So I'd made it successfully to Tartu without talking to a single person. Now, in Tartu is where things definitely got interesting, and I got a better picture of what Estonia is like and the kind of fun and creativity that exists in Tartu. So when I got off of the bus, I had to find the student dormitories. Now, for me, I was trying to use my best Estonian possible. And for me, the Ratuse dormitory was Ratusi. So I was going around asking people, hey, do you know where Ratusi is? And basically I was getting a bunch of weird looks. But then I approached a group of girls, and they were like, oh, okay, yeah, that's the dormitory, we'll help you find it. And the girl who volunteered to take me there, she stepped out of the group. She had white eye contacts in. She referred to herself as Orochimaru, the white snake, and was going to be my guide to the dormitories. So already I'm just like, okay, people here are a little weird. And so that was actually my first Estonian contact. So going from there, I started my first year of study abroad. I lived in the classic dormitories. For me, I actually lived with a group of Spaniards, but later on I actually switched dormitory rooms, and I ended up sharing it with a group of Estonians. So for me, and I think for a lot of foreigners, one of the things that we're really interested when we come to the University of Tartu is actually interacting with Estonians. So for me and a lot of other people, we have tons of Estonian friends. They're usually mixed when we go to parties. And I think that's a really important thing, because when you actually choose to study in Tartu, you're actually choosing to study in a more international community. You're not just going to be hanging out with only Estonians, but really there's a lot of opportunities to engage with people from a variety of cultures. So not only are the foreign students, getting experiences with other students, but also Estonians are really involved in the dynamic dynamic. And so there's really a lot of intercultural mixing. So my first year of Estonia was, again, my exchange year. So that meant a quite wide variety of parties, going out and kind of seeing what the local Tartu culture had to offer. For me, coming from the US, this might surprise you guys, but the majority of clubs and bars and everything else usually close at about midnight. Whereas in Tartu and other parts of Estonia, things aren't opening until midnight. So the first night I went out and I went to a cafe, just a cafe that had coffee and was open till 2 a.m. I was shocked because the only thing out open after 2 a.m. in the US is usually Walmart. So to have the honor to go to a cafe instead of, browsing around Walmart in the middle of the night was already very exciting for me. And one of the really, really great things about Tartu and the kind of nightlife there is it is really mixed. So you have your kind of classical, oh, hey, we're going to go out and dance sort of things. And for that, they had a lot of ESN events and Erasmus programs where you can have fun with international students and do dancing and things like that. But what also is really prevalent is sort of that hipster and art culture as well. So one of these sort of famous bars to really hang out and just kind of engage with in Tartu is Moku/Generaliste de Klubi. And they just have a really, really interesting environment. And for me, coming from the US, where things were a little bit like cookie cutter, where every house almost looks the same and you end up with every bar almost looking the same, it was a really, really fun experience for me as well. And when I went to Tartu, my initial impulse was to, okay, let's keep it low, let's study. But the really great thing is, within Tartu, there's such an easy opportunity to combine your school with your life balance. Everything's really centrally located. The dormitories are right in the city center. So basically, you have like a 5-minute walk into the action and to engage with people. And for me in the US, this is completely opposite of what I'm used to. In the US, I would actually have to drive about an hour to get to school each day, drive an hour back, and then if I wanted to go anywhere, I'd actually have to go into a different city. So for me, being in Tartu, which was this small kind of tight-knit city, it really gave me a lot of opportunities to go around, explore, and have fun. And so it was a lot more engaging than I actually thought it was going to be from the start. And so really, again, going back into this sort of interlaying and dynamics, my first year in Tartu was incredibly fun and incredibly interesting. And so after I had completed my first year, again, I was still on study abroad, so I was, bright-eyed and just like, oh, everything's so exciting. I loved Estonia. And I was actually applying for master's programs throughout the US. So I had gotten into 2 schools in the US. I got into Columbia University, which is an Ivy League school and one of the highest rating in the US. And I had also gotten into Parsons School of Design, which is a fashion school in New York. So I actually basically had the option to spend my master's degree in New York City, which I feel is the dream of kind of many people. But I had actually also applied to the University of Tartu to come back again and do a master's. So I know you guys are already thinking in your head, Tartu or New York City? And New York City is probably like shooting through your guys' mind. Like, why would you stay in Tartu if you could have gone to one of the major metropolitan cities of the world? Well, there's actually a few things that sort of went into that decision. Well, one of the things that people often forget is New York is one of the most expensive places to be. So if I would have chosen to study in New York, I would not have had the ability to do anything, really. I basically would have been able to study, I could have gone home and gone to class, but existing was probably more than I could afford in New York. But Tartu had a variety of scholarships. The tuition was free for me for doing a master's there. And additionally, they had a lot of opportunities that I could apply for and give different money so that I wasn't just completely living the broke student life, especially without any support. So that factored a lot into my decision, and I ended up coming back for my MA. So with my MA, that was another 2 years in Tartu. So after that, I knew that it was time to get more involved within sort of Tartu life and to see what there is to do here. And so for me, I actually ended up joining probably about too many clubs and getting involved in too many activities. So one of the really first things I ended up getting involved with was the Korean Culture Club at the University of Tartu. I don't know if there's any Koreaboos out there. Does anyone watch Korean dramas or listen to Korean music? Okay, yes, I see you girls in the back. I feel you, we can relate. Connection. But yeah, so I ended up at the University of Tartu. They have Korean courses. And I'd always been interested in Korean culture. I watched the movies and the shows and the dramas. And so I actually took the Korean class. And with that, we learned that they had a Korean culture club. And the really cool thing about that is even if you're not, super interested in Korean culture right out, they have a lot of really exciting activities. So for example, in Tartu, every year they have a K-pop dance festival, and that actually has, like hundreds of performers performing different K-pop dances, and it's just really exciting. They do different like Korean cooking events, and I've actually been there and done some different like origami trainings and things like this. So that's just like a bit on the Korean culture, but even more than that, there's really a lot of other cultural activities. So they have the international student ambassadors who work for connecting the Estonian crowd into the kind of cultural life. So they run a variety of kind of cultural and educational activities that anyone can get involved in. So really there's tons of things happening as well. So for example, one of the Italian classes in Tartu, is anyone interested in Italian culture? Does anyone like Italian food, is the next question. That's pretty much everyone. So actually, with one of the classes there, the Italian professor had a really cool idea. So in the course, you learn about different cities and culture in Italy, but with every lecture, you also have a cooking lesson. So you get to do a cooking culture alongside learning some basic Italian, learning Italian culture, and you get the ability to do cooking with that. So when you come to Tartu, it's not just like, oh, I'm going to continue my Estonian life, but really you have a lot of opportunities to engage with different cultures and engage with different experiences. So those were just some of the things with Italian and Korean. So those got me really active and involved. Then moving on from there, I had actually done 2 years of an MA at this point. So now you're wondering, okay, he did a solid 3 years of Tartu. Like, that's impressive, good job, keep it going, but are you gonna go back? I'm still here. So I ended up deciding to do my PhD at the University of Tartu as well. With that, again, I always think it's interesting to see what decisions I had to make before that. So for this one, I actually had a job offer in Dublin, Ireland. So I could have lived in Dublin, which is one of my favorite cities, or I could have continued to live in Tartu. Again, this is raising one of those ethical dilemmas in a lot of your minds. You're like, oh my God, just go to Dublin, go to New York. Why are you in Tartu? But really, like, Tartu would allow me a lot more opportunities because the nice thing about Estonia in general is there's just so many opportunities available to get invested in a field or get invested in a topic you like. So I knew if I would have went to Dublin, I would have had an entry-level position and I would have been working my way up from there and trying to figure things out. But the really great thing about Tartu and Estonia in general is you can basically email someone, go, hey, I'd like to intern for you. And about 50% of the time, they'll be like, yeah, sure, why not? In the US, it's like you're sending in applications and you're competing against other people to work for free. So one of the really great things, and the reason I actually stayed in Estonia for longer, is it gave me so many opportunities to really build up my career. Here I was able to just volunteer, or just ask someone like, oh hey, can I work there or can I do this? And the opportunities really come. One of the things is in Tartu, there's a really big startup community. So right now I actually work in a startup called Weekdone, which does a business management sort of app. But I also did some things with Sensibility and other organizations like that. And all I had to do was go, oh, hey, do you think I could, volunteer here and work on some things? And oftentimes the answer was yes. Whereas in the US, basically people would shoot you down because you need, 4 years job experience and a PhD degree to get an internship. So being here, I was able to really kind of build up my opportunities. So now I'm actually in my second year of my PhD and moving forward with that. So this is just a little bit about how kind of my overall journey in Estonia went. And I think really for you guys, the important things to take away is that a lot of times the way you view kind of your own country and the way you view your opportunities in a given location are a bit biased. You have what everyone generally says, oh, people want to go away. Like, when I was in the US, I was like, oh my gosh, like I need to go somewhere else as well. And sometimes that prevents you from seeing like a lot of the opportunities and chances you have there as well. So I think one of the important things is that Tartu isn't just like a little village in the middle of nowhere where you'll do your homework, take a nap, and then wake up the next day to do homework again. But really, there's a lot of opportunities to get involved, to make friends, to meet international students, and to really expand your frame of mind, especially because of how close-knit the community in Tartu is, where you can just walk out onto the street and find something to do. Nothing's really exclusive, nothing's closed off. So you really have the ability to explore your own opportunities and find out things that fit you. So that's really kind of what I wanted to go over today, and just kind of now open it up to you guys to see if you had any questions for me, either about what I do, my experience in Tartu, how life is like in Estonia. Any questions? Okay, we got our question man coming up here.
Nagu eelnevalt sai öeldud, siis me kasutame seda appworkshop.com-i, mille see sisestussõna või eventi idee on Opi Tartus. Ja siin on tõesti mõned küsimused. What are the main differences between studying in the US and in Estonia?
Yeah, so one of the really interesting things is that the study system in terms of how you're graded and how things work are a bit similar, actually. But the biggest difference is the US doesn't let you have the opportunity to fail as much. So for example, I was kind of amazed in Estonia that the grade E exists, the 51 to 60%, because under 60% in the US, you're already failing. And then also the ability to retake tests here was like a lifesaver, because typically in the US, you have what's known as finals week, where about all of your classes will give you the exams in the course of 1 week. Which is probably the most stressful week in your life. Everyone's going crazy, people are running around, like people are getting sent to the hospital because they're so stressed. And already seeing in Estonia that they're like, oh, you have a full month, we'll place your exams in different points, really was a lot of anxiety relief, because otherwise, like the US final system was like so stressful. But actually there is a fair bit of similarities in how classes are structured and how you engage with your teachers. But also in the US, it's so big and there's so many different schools that it really varies depending on where you're at.
So next question, what are your favorite places in Tartu?
Okay, so in Tartu, I'm a bit of a cafe junkie. For me, I love just cafe hopping, just chilling there, responding to some Facebook message or checking out Instagram. So I really, really like the One Cafe Sade. It's like really relaxing, and actually I think maybe too many people like it now, because basically everyone goes there to study. So typically everyone's got their laptops out there, they're typing away, so you usually have to get in there early to fight for your spot. But one of my favorite places, and really one of the favorite experiences I had, was the old Cathedral Ruins. So at the top of the hill where the University Museum is, they have the abandoned ruins as well. So you can go up to the top of the cathedral, look out over the town, and it's just a really beautiful scene. But now, actually, they have couches at the top of it. So during the summer, when I was writing my MA thesis, I brought my laptop, I went to the top of the cathedral, and it was just almost like a romantic experience typing away at my MA thesis while overlooking the city on top of these ancient ruins. So that's definitely one of my favorite places too.
How long you are planning to stay in Tartu in Estonia?
Yes. Well, I at least have 2.5 more years that I have to do while finishing my PhD here. Again, the challenge is almost every time that I finished a degree here, I was expecting to leave and expecting to go somewhere else, but I kept getting offered an opportunity or having a chance that I knew I couldn't get anywhere else. So I ended up staying and staying. So we have 2.5 years to figure things out, but I know I'll probably have definitely an opportunity to stay here longer. So we will see when we get there.
What's the weirdest thing about Estonians? Please make us feel special.
Well, I always just say my comment for Estonians is you guys are like cats. And hear me out on this. So, what do cats like? Okay, cats, like stay in the back of the room, but then they come up when they get comfortable around you. Okay, Estonians do a little bit of that. If you have Estonian in your class, they'll kind of watch you, they'll be interested, and then eventually they'll come up and you'll be like, oh, hey. Once they kind of get to know you and the Estonian decides they like you, then you're best friends, whether I realized or not, where they're like, oh, I like you, okay, we're friends now. And I'm just like, wait, when did this happen? So it's a lot with cats when they kind of like choose the person they like, and then it's like, oh, okay, hey, what's up? Also, cats, just like Estonians, love milk. So Estonia has quite a wide variety of milk products. So whether it's the kohuke, the kefir, just any milk product, Estonia has a lot more milk. And the other thing that I always say is cats love technology, just like Estonians. I don't know if you've ever had to remove a cat from a laptop, but basically the same thing with Estonians. If you have an open laptop, I'm pretty sure you guys will usually just go out and lay on it. At least that's what I've seen from my experience.
Jason, thank you very much. Thank you.
Great, thank you guys.